Okay, hello and welcome everyone. So we have some breaking news that was announced today, as much as it's possible to have breaking news in the personal finance space. Um, the brokerage firm Robinhood, which some of you may be aware of, we'll talk about a little bit who they are shortly. They've announced early this morning that they're rolling out what they're billing as checking and savings accounts, right? That each pay 3% interest per year. They're open. You can sign up as of today. And I've had two different people reach out to me since lunchtime today to ask me what I thought about them. Right, this is something that has been circulated a little bit more than most news stories have been. It seems like because it's catchy, right? This idea of having a checking or savings account that pays 3% a year sounds great, right? So what do I think? I'm going to make it as simple as possible for you. This is not a good idea. You should stay as far away from them as you can. Period. Full stop. Simply put, right, these are actually not checking and savings accounts at all. They're brokerage accounts. It's a checking and savings account service, perhaps. That's why in the description of the video, I linked to Yahoo Finance, the article they have with this announcement, because they're the only ones who I think got it right. They're the only ones who are describing it as a checking service rather than a checking account. And there is a difference. We'll talk about it. Long story short, there's enough downsides to this that you should stay as far away from it as you can, in my opinion. But background on this firm, Robinhood, right? In case you're not aware, they're a relatively new company, and they're primarily an investment trading platform, very appealing to young people in the early stages of their career. In that it's a very tech savvy platform, right? It's all based off of a very sleek mobile app. Trading is very easy. There are no trading costs, at least to you as the investor. There are some on the back end that they make, and they've had a lot of success, right? They make it very easy to buy and sell stocks, very easy for the average person to invest. They've grown very, very rapidly as a startup over the past few years. Earlier this year, in I think it was April 2018, it was reported that they had surpassed online discount brokerage E-Trade in the number of users just after a few years of existence, which is a huge milestone. The Wall Street Journal has estimated that the company's valued at almost $6 billion. They're likely to IPO or release stock of their own over the next year or two. And in fact, the CEO of Robinhood essentially said as much on CNN earlier this morning. They're a good platform for what they do. Like I said, they've opened up investing to the average investor in a way that a lot of brands have not. I have some philosophical differences with them, but they're a good platform. And specifically they make money whenever you trade on the back end. Therefore, they make it very, very easy and encourage you to do a lot of trading. And I generally think is not a good strategy for most people. So like I said, I have a little bit of a disagreement with them in that regard, but they're a good platform at what they do. They've built a good reputation for themselves. And their technology really is the future of the financial services industry. I think that they have a good future ahead of them. But here's the problem, right? Earlier today, they roll out their marketing initiative that's advertising new checking and savings accounts with a 3% interest rate. It looks like a really, really good deal, right? Particularly compared to the big US banks who are still paying close to nothing in interest on their savings accounts, even though the Fed has repeatedly raised interest rates over the past few years, and they're making more of a profit on their savings accounts than they used to, right? That's a lot of 3% is a lot more money that you can earn compared to them. And even some of the high yield savings accounts that are out there at traditional banks, places like Discover's high yield savings account, American Express's high yield savings account, and Ally Bank's savings account are three particularly popular ones. Those accounts right now are only paying 2%, right? So I mean, even compared to those more established high yield banks with low overhead costs, they're still paying a full percent point more. Again, it sounds like a good deal. But here's the problem, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, right? These aren't bank accounts at all, right? They're brokerage accounts, they're investment accounts, which is a huge problem for the money that is in your checking and savings accounts that you're using on a somewhat regular basis for several reasons. First and foremost, investment accounts like this new checking and savings service at Robinhood, and bank accounts at your more traditional banks are regulated differently, right? And they do a lot of the same things, but they're regulated differently, and that actually does matter here. Banks, when you put money in, right, they make money by taking the money you've deposited there and lending it out to other people in the forms of mortgages and bonds and things like that, right, which is how they make their income, and then they pass a portion of that along to you in interest, right? But they're investing it in many ways, right, which is how they're making money off the money that you keep in your accounts. If the investments they make work out poorly to such an extent that when you go to take money out, it's not there, the FDIC comes in, right? Your accounts are insured through the FDIC, right, to make you whole again, so that you're able to withdraw the funds that you need. Your principal, the amount of money you keep in a bank account, is at no risk, even if the bank completely fails, right? You'll get all your money back via the FDIC insurance program up to a certain dollar amount, right? Once you start getting over $250,000 in one particular bank account, you start to have some issues. But in general, right, the money you put into a bank account is safe for the most part. With Robinhood's new checking and savings accounts, right, they're not insured by the FDIC. They're insured by what's called the SPIC, or the Securities, the SIPC. I always get that backwards. The Securities Investor Protection Corporation works similarly in that, when the brokerage firm fails, they'll kick money in, so you can get your money back. But there is one big difference there, right? What they don't do is protect yourself against market risk. Right. I mentioned before, the FDIC insures your entire bank account balance. You can get it out as long as you're under their limit, even if the bank fails. Right. Under the SIPC protection, you're not, right. If your account balance goes down, you can't take out the full amount, obviously, right. They're not insuring against market risk. Which brings us back to Robinhood, right? Because they're explicitly taking your money and investing it in investments. Right. If those investments go down in value, you might not be able to get all your money out of your account, period. Right. You might not actually see that, right? Unless something goes really wrong for them, you won't even notice that per se. But that could be a problem for them, and for you. And admittedly, they're investing in relatively stable investments. The odds of this happening aren't great, but they can go down in value. And if that happens to such a volume that you're not able to get money out of your account, that's a real problem for money in a checking or savings account, right? And what's more, right, this isn't likely to happen on any one particular day. When it is more likely to happen is during very unstable market conditions, like what happened, when the U.S. economy essentially crashed in 2007, 2008, 2009. That's when this is more likely to happen than anything. You saw several big firms fail during that time. And unfortunately, not only is that when they're most likely to have this issue, that's also when you're most likely to be laid off, right, or to have some sort of employment issue as a result of the market going down around you. It's when you're most likely to actually need the money in your savings account, is when they're more likely to not be able to get it to you, right? It's a problem, right? This sort of risk isn't particularly high, but it has no place in your savings, and particularly your checking account, period. And even if the investments that Robinhood is making behind the scenes to generate a profit off this don't fall in value per se, right? They're not even earning 3% on these investments right now to pay out to you, right? As of 3:15 p.m. on today, Thursday, December 13th, 2018, right, interest rates on 10-year Treasury notes, 2.9%. They're not even earning enough on the investments they're putting your money into right now to pay you the full 3%. Now, granted, right, these accounts are going to come with debit cards as well, it sounds like, and they're going to earn a few cents of revenue every time somebody swipes a debit card. But as of right now, right, they're taking a loss on this, and they're going to have a hard time getting profitable if people aren't actually using their debit cards, period, right? In my opinion, the worst case scenario for them, what happens as more and more people sign up for this seemingly attractive service, because 3% sounds great, people are keeping their money in savings to earn that 3% interest, but they're not actually using the debit cards that much, right? Robinhood's going to lose more and more money on this service. It's not stable at all, right? They're banking on being able to earn 3% or more on the service, pocket the difference to make a profit and pay the 3% out to you. But that's very, very, very difficult to do using their typical strategies of making money on things without taking on at least a nominal amount of investing risk. Right? It might end up being fine, and you're probably not going to see it in your account until things escalate to a certain point. But it's not terribly difficult to imagine a bubble forming here. Right? People are joining the service because they're promised 3% payouts. Robinhood isn't making 3% on the service to actually get to that point to begin with, and the system just collapsing at some point. Right? Again, it might not be the most likely scenario here, but it's absolutely possible. And again, for your checking and savings account that you use on a day-to-day basis, I'm sorry, I think that's a terrible, terrible idea. Even worse, right? Robinhood right now is a small firm. And I have nothing against small firms. My firm is a small firm, right? But for a $6 billion company, right, they have about 300 employees right now, a lot of whom are engineers to make their platform run, things like that. They have very, very little dedicated customer support, if any, quite frankly. I haven't actually been able to verify they do have a support team at all, which might not matter on a day-to-day basis, but would really, really matter big time if there was ever a service outage on their platform. If you logged into your account isn't accessible, or you get a warning that says your account's deactivated due to an error for some reason. Now, I can almost hear you saying in the back of your head, how likely is that to actually happen, right? How realistic is it that you're not going to be able to access your account at all? And I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. All I know is that it happened yesterday, literally yesterday. Their options trading platform was down for a good number of their client accounts all day long yesterday. And as of 9:06 this morning, over 24 hours later, right, they put out a release saying that almost all, or I think it was nearly all accounts have been restored. Right, this is still an issue for some people 24 hours later, which is a problem for options trading in particular. The part of their platform that was affected by this is actually the one that the impact was the worst, because options investing has deadlines associated with it, right? If you want to just go in to buy a stock and hold it for a while, then sell it, right? If you can't access your investment platform for a little bit, it's not really the end of the world, right? You might need to buy or sell at a slightly different price, which isn't very fun and would irritate people, justifiably so, but it's not a crisis per se, right? With options trading, options are fairly complicated investment vehicles. I'll save you on the details for now, right? They have deadlines associated with them. If you pay money to invest into a stock option, and you have to exercise it by a certain point in order to make money on it, if you decide to, which means that if your option expired at some point yesterday during their during their service outage, you kind of just got screwed, right? You lost your ability to actually make money on the investment that you paid for, right? Not good. Again, it happened yesterday, the day before they're announcing this checking and savings service, right? And just you can imagine what would happen if you're traveling abroad somewhere, you're trying to make a purchase you need to make, and you can't because your account's down, right? It might be unlikely, but that is a really, really bad scenario. And it's made worse by the fact that during this outage yesterday, they had almost no customer support available to help people work through these issues, right? They just got notifications saying their account's deactivated, too bad, and they had to wait until it was restored, right? There was no further information. They just were told that got a blanket email, we're working on it at this time, right? They can't handle the volume for customer support right now. That might change in the future, but they clearly can't handle the volume of people they're working with right now. In fact, I think it says all that needs to be said about this is that they're advertising this service as you can open these checking or savings accounts starting today, but you're not going to get your debit card for another month or so. Even the big banks who are way behind on the technology services compared to a platform like Robinhood, right? Even they can get you a debit card almost immediately, right? It's going to take over a month for Robinhood to do it. I really don't think they can handle the volume right now. And when we're, with all the other things we talked about, that creates problems, period, right? Long story short, this service might look like a bank. They might talk about themselves like they're a bank, but they're not a bank, and they're not regulated like a bank. You know, like quite frankly, it's been pretty clear to me today, they're held to a lower advertising standard as a brokerage firm than most financial services firms that are out there. If I advertise a service as blatantly misleading and saying we're opening a checking account and savings account service, I'd be violating the truth in advertising provisions of the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. I could get fined. I could have my firm shut down if I was going to do something like this, right? This is not the quality service that it appears to me. That there's more risk involved than meets the eye at first glance, and certainly more risk that has been covered in most of the news releases about this over the course of today. And that risk is the part that really matters when we're talking about your checking and savings account, right? Checking and savings account at a high level have two roles for you. Number one, keep your money safe so you can earn it and spend it as you please. And number two, right, to earn a little bit in interest. Sure, why not? But those rules are in order of importance, right? That keeping your money safe is the first and foremost priority, right? Your cash accounts are not where you should be taking any sort of investment risk, right? Most of your money should be invested, but what you keep in cash in your checking and savings account should be 100% risk-free. Right? Typically, I recommend people keep a couple $1,000s in a checking account as a buffer at any one point in time. Obviously, it's going to go up and down as you pay your monthly bills and things like that. But typically, just keep enough as a buffer so you can make a bigger purchase if you needed to. Savings accounts, right? 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses you should have covered. More specifically, if you're single or you have a one-income household, you typically should try to save 6 months of living expenses in an emergency savings account. If you have a two-income household, i.e. if you're married and both of you work, typically 3 months is okay. Depending on your circumstances, that might change a little bit, but that at least is a target to work for. And then finally, money that you need for short-term goals, that you need the money to be there when you're ready to use it. If you're closing on a house in 3 months, you don't want to be taking investment risk with that money, right? You don't want to run the risk that your bank account's not going to be accessible to you because the service is down the day when you need to close and write the check, right? Generally speaking, that's it. Like, that's all you should be keeping in cash. The rest of it should be invested in a platform like Robinhood's, sure, right? They're good at what they do from an investing standpoint. But for your cash, for your checking and savings accounts, you should be using high yield savings accounts at traditional banks for your savings, and then just any checking account that doesn't charge you a fee for your checking accounts. Earn some interest in that way. But if you have $10,000, for example, in savings right now, 3% of that at Robinhood is $300 per year. 2% of that at a high yield savings account, $200 a year, right? That 100 extra dollars per year, in my opinion, is very, very clearly not worth the perhaps unlikely but very, very large and consequential risks of this new checking and savings account service offered by Robinhood, right? The difference is, $100 a year, $8.33 per month. If you want to break it up by week, it's $1.92 difference, 27 cents per day. To me, that's not worth the risk of putting your money in a bank that's not a bank at all. Right? Invest in a platform like that, sure. Keep your cash in fully FDIC insured checking and savings accounts, period, full stop. If you want some recommendations, I mentioned them a little bit earlier. The Discover personal high yield savings account, American Express has a personal high yield savings account, and Ally Bank has a personal high yield savings account. Those three are phenomenal. Highly recommend all three. They are real banks that pay much higher interest than a traditional bank. A little bit less than Robinhood is claiming to right now, but without the big fundamental issues and risks associated with it. Anyway, hope this was helpful. A little bit of an extra video here this week. Whenever I get somebody, more than one person asking a question, that's generally my cue that I need to answer it for people. Hope this has been helpful. I'm Bill Nelson with Pacesetter Planning, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.